They came at first light, a black sedan kicking up dust on the long gravel driveway, an unwelcome shadow stretching across my porch. 3 men in cheap suits, their faces grim, their eyes cold as January frost, stepped out and advanced like pallbearers. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate to escape. I knew instantly why they were here. The air had been thick with veiled threats for weeks. This was it. This was the moment they'd been building towards. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. I clutched the faded wooden railing of my porch, splinters digging into my palm. The morning sun, usually a comforting warmth, felt like an interrogation lamp. One of them, a man with a slicked-back comb-over and a folder tucked under his arm, took a step forward. "Ma'am, we're here on behalf of Sterling Holdings. This property, as you know, is now under their ownership. We're here to facilitate your departure." He spoke with a practiced, detached politeness that was more chilling than outright aggression. "My departure?" I scoffed, a laugh bubbling up that was more hysteria than humor. "This isn't just property, sir. This is my home. This farm," I swept my arm across the sprawling fields, still dew-kissed and shimmering in the early light, "has been in my family for over a century. We're not going anywhere." The scent of wet earth and pine, a smell that had been my comfort since childhood, seemed to mock their sterile intentions. Another man, taller and broader, stepped to his side, his gaze sweeping over the weathered barn and the old oak tree that stood sentinel by the well. "We understand this is difficult, but the papers are all in order. Your lease agreement has expired, and the land has been sold." "Lease agreement?" My voice rose, cutting through the crisp morning air. "There's no lease. This land, this farm, it belongs to the Walkers. It always has. My great-grandparents built this house with their own hands. My grandfather plowed these fields. Do you understand? The land title has been in my family for generations." The words felt like stones leaving my mouth, each one a declaration of war. That Tuesday when those men arrived, it felt like the world had tilted on its axis. But the farm itself, she just stood there, unwavering. My farm. It's not just a parcel of land marked on a map, it's the very bedrock of who I am. Every breath I take out here, every sunrise painting the eastern sky with fire, confirms a belonging that runs deeper than any deed. I'm Sarah, and this sprawling expanse of green, bordered by ancient oaks and a lazy creek, has been my family's sanctuary, our livelihood, our very soul, for generations. I remember my grandmother, Alara, used to tell me stories while we shelled peas on the porch swing, the wood groaning beneath us. Her hands, gnarled with age and work, moved with a quiet dignity. "This dirt, child," she'd murmur, her gaze distant, fixed on the shimmering heat haze above the cornfields. "It remembers. It remembers your great-grandparents clearing the brush, the sweat on their brows, the dreams in their hearts. They weren't just buying land, they were planting roots for a legacy, for us." She always insisted that every ripple in the creek, every whisper of the wind through the tall grass, carried the echoes of our past. I can still hear her voice, a gentle rasp, as she'd emphasize, "The papers, Sarah, the land title, they're just ink on parchment. The real title is in your blood, in the memories held by these fields." Her words always filled me with a quiet strength, a sense of immense responsibility and profound gratitude. Walking through the orchard now, the air thick with the scent of ripening apples and damp earth, I traced the rough bark of a tree my great-grandfather supposedly planted. He would bring his children out here, teaching them about the cycles of nature, instilling a reverence for the ground beneath their feet. My own hands, stained with soil from a morning's work, feel like a continuation of that unbroken line, a living testament to every generation that tended this soil before me. The old farmhouse itself, with its faded blue paint and the perpetually creaking screen door, is more than just a house. It's a repository of laughter, tears, birth, and loss. Each scratch on the floorboards, every worn patch on the banister, tells a silent story of lives lived fully, entwined with the rhythm of this place. This isn't just property, it's a living archive of my family's existence. How could anyone ever think I would just walk away from that? The eviction notice, crisp and cold in my trembling hand, felt like a death sentence whispered by the wind. Every word blurred, then sharpened, accusing me of something unimaginable, not belonging. The scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke, usually so comforting, now seemed to mock me, reminding me of all I stood to lose. My grandfather's words echoed in the quiet air. This land is in our blood, child. It's not just dirt, it's generations of sweat and dreams. How could they claim it wasn't mine? Desperate, I remembered Martha. She wasn't just a lawyer. She was Martha Peterson, a woman whose family had lived in this valley as long as mine, a formidable presence with eyes that missed nothing. I drove into town, the old pickup rattling over the gravel road, each bump a jarring reminder of my fragile reality. Her office was in a stoic red brick building downtown, smelling of old paper and freshly brewed coffee. The bell above the door chimed, a surprisingly cheerful sound given the turmoil in my gut. Martha looked up from behind a stack of files, her silver hair pulled back tightly, a pair of reading glasses perched on her nose. "Well, look who the cat dragged in," she said, her voice dry as aged oak. "To what do I owe the pleasure of seeing you out of your overalls?" Her smile was a thin line, but her eyes held a flicker of genuine warmth. I walked to her desk, the official papers feeling heavy and accusatory. "Martha, it's the farm," I choked out, pushing the notice across her polished desk. My voice cracked, raw with the fear I hadn't allowed myself to fully acknowledge until that moment. She picked up the document, her brow furrowing almost immediately. The air in the small office seemed to thicken, pressing down on my chest. "They want to evict me," I added, the words a hoarse whisper. She read quickly, her expression shifting from mild curiosity to a steely resolve. "Evict you? From the Miller place? That's ridiculous. Your family has owned that land since before I was born." She slammed the paper gently onto the desk, the sound definitive. "This is some kind of mistake, or worse. Who exactly is Consolidated Land Holdings?" Her gaze was sharp, probing, demanding answers I didn't have. "We'll rip this to shreds. Don't you worry, kid. They don't know who they're dealing with." Later, I found myself sitting on Mr. Henderson's porch swing, the familiar creak a balm to my frayed nerves. His farm bordered ours, and he was nearly 90, his face a map of the harsh seasons he'd weathered. He offered me a glass of iced tea, sweetened just right. "Saw you heading into town earlier. Looked like a ghost had chased you," he observed, his voice raspy from years of calling cows. "What's got your soul in a knot?" I explained everything. The eviction notice, Martha's immediate fierce reaction. He listened patiently, nodding slowly, his eyes fixed on the horizon where his cornfields met mine. "Figures," he finally said, taking a sip of his tea. "These big corporations, they sniff out good land like hogs to truffles. They think they can just push folks off, especially folks like us, tied to the dirt." A distant tractor hummed, a lonely, persistent sound. "But this land, it's been in our family for generations, Mr. Henderson," I pleaded, searching for reassurance in his weathered face. "Grandpa always said the original deed was tucked away somewhere safe, a proper ironclad title from the pioneers." He sighed, a long, weary sound. "That's the thing about old family papers, darlin'. Sometimes they get lost, sometimes they get forgotten, sometimes they just ain't strong enough against a pile of money." His words, while gentle, carried the weight of experience, casting a long shadow over my fragile hope. The crisp morning air, usually a balm, felt suddenly sharp, carrying a hum that grew steadily louder. I was out mending the fence line near the old oak, hands calloused, when a sleek black sedan, far too polished for these dusty tracks, pulled slowly into view. It stopped by the main gate, kicking up soil. A tall, impeccably dressed man emerged, carrying a slim briefcase utterly out of place against my ramshackle barns. My gut tightened. Folks who drove cars like that rarely brought good news. "Mr. Davies?" His voice was smooth, cutting through the morning stillness, carrying an unnerving authority. His eyes were cold, assessing, like a banker. "I'm Thomas Thorne, representing Sterling Holdings. We need to discuss a matter concerning this property." My grip tightened. "This property, Mr. Thorne, has been in my family for over 100 years. There's nothing to discuss." A faint smile played on his lips. "Perhaps you're not fully aware of the current situation then. He produced a thick envelope, the stark white paper a contrast to the fence's wood. We've acquired the lien on this property, a very old, unpaid tax obligation. Due process, Mr. Davies. It's all quite legal. The words hit me, stealing my breath. A lien? My family never missed a payment. What are you talking about? My voice rose, laced with disbelief. An unpaid tax bill? This farm has been the Davies home since the Civil War. Every deed, every bill, every payment is accounted for. He merely shrugged, his indifference a calculated weapon. Records show otherwise. A minor oversight, perhaps, but one that legally transferred ownership. We're here to facilitate your departure. We can discuss terms, of course, to make the transition as smooth as possible. The audacity, the cold-blooded nerve, ignited a fire in my gut. Departure? I scoffed, stepping closer, pliers clutched. You think you can just waltz in here and take what's mine? What's been my family's for generations? You've got another thing coming, Mr. Thorne. This isn't just property. This is my home, my history, my blood and sweat. And I'm not going anywhere. The morning sun, promising warmth, now a spotlight on this confrontation, highlighting the dust motes dancing between us. His expression remained unreadable, but a flicker in his eyes betrayed a hint of surprise, as if he hadn't expected such immediate defiance. He probably dealt with people who crumbled. I assure you, Mr. Davies, we have all the necessary documentation. It would be in your best interest to cooperate. He gestured vaguely at the landscape, the rolling fields, the ancient barns, as if they were already his. The implication was clear. I was beaten. The immediate aftermath of their initial visit settled like an uneasy shroud over the farm. I tried, truly, to dismiss the chill that had snaked into my bones, telling myself their bravado was just a cheap tactic. For a few days, the familiar cadence of farm life returned. The scent of damp earth after a morning shower, the rustle of the cornstalks, the soft lowing of the cattle, they were balm to my frayed nerves. I walked the fields, running my calloused hands over the wheat, whispering to the soil as if it could reassure me. Yet, with every creak of the porch swing, every distant car engine, a phantom dread would prickle the back of my neck. I kept the old Winchester polished and close, an almost superstitious comfort. They won't be back, will they? I found myself asking my old dog Buster, his head resting heavily on my lap, his eyes soulful and knowing. He just offered a soft sigh, a canine shrug, and went back to dreaming of squirrels. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe that their fleeting presence was just a scare, a random act of corporate bullying that had already fizzled out. This land, this life, felt too woven into my very being to be so easily torn away. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something, anything, to break the fragile calm. Then the formal letter arrived. It wasn't a vague, unmarked envelope like the first notice. This one bore the sleek, almost clinical logo of Horizon Development Group, a name I recognized, a major player in the state's rapid urban sprawl. The paper felt thick, cold, expensive between my fingers. My stomach lurched. This isn't just some empty threat, I mumbled, the words tasting like ash. The language was meticulously legal, cold, asserting their intent to acquire my property through all necessary means. It mentioned eminent domain and significant investment in community progress. I remember dialing Sarah, my lawyer, with trembling hands. Her voice, usually so steady and reassuring, held a new, tight edge when I read her excerpts from the document. Horizon, she repeated slowly, the name sounding like a death knell. They're not just trying to scare you, Frank. They're playing for keeps. This isn't about a quick flip. They want a major development here. And they have the capital to muscle anyone out of their way. The phone felt heavy, a connection to a world I didn't understand, a world of abstract legal battles far removed from the tangible reality of my farm. What does that mean for us, Sarah? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What does all necessary means truly imply? There was a pause, a significant silence that spoke volumes. It means they'll start with offers, Frank. Then they'll try to find any small compliance issue, any obscure zoning technicality. If that fails, they'll go straight to court. Their lawyers are relentless, and they've won every land dispute they've ever started." Her words hung in the air, transforming the gentle hum of the farm into a low, menacing drone. The initial calm was not a resolution, but a mere prelude to a much darker storm. The air, usually sweet with the scent of damp earth and blooming honeysuckle, felt suddenly heavy, choked with the metallic tang of unspoken threat. I had just finished mending a broken fence post near the south pasture when I heard the distinct crunch of tires on my gravel driveway, not the familiar rumble of the feed truck, but a sleek, almost silent glide. My gaze lifted to see a large, dark SUV, far too polished for farm roads, pulling up to the house, its chrome glinting mockingly in the afternoon sun. My heart, which had been beating a steady rhythm against my ribs just moments before, now hammered a frantic drum. This wasn't a friendly visit. Two men, dressed in suits so sharp they looked out of place against the backdrop of my weathered farmhouse, emerged from the vehicle. One was older, with a thin, severe face that seemed carved from granite, the other, younger, with an eager, almost predatory glint in his eyes. Behind them, another figure, less impeccably dressed, began to unpack a tripod and some surveying equipment from the trunk. My stomach tightened into a knot. They weren't just sending letters anymore. They were making a statement, a bold, unsettling declaration of intent on my land. I walked towards them, my boots sinking slightly into the soft ground, my hands instinctively clenching into fists at my sides. A tremor ran through me, not of fear, but of a cold, steady fury. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tempest brewing inside me. The older man stepped forward, his expression devoid of warmth. "Ms. Miller," he began, his voice a low, gravelly drone, "we represent Meridian Holdings. As you know, we've been in contact regarding the acquisition of this property." I cut him off before he could continue. "I know nothing of the sort. I've received your letters, yes, and I've made my position abundantly clear. This farm is not for sale." The younger man chuckled, a dismissive sound that grated on my ears. "Oh, it's not for sale, Ms. Miller? That's interesting, because we're here to initiate the survey for the new development. We anticipate breaking ground by early next quarter." His words hung in the air, audacious and chilling. The surveyor, meanwhile, was already setting up his equipment, oblivious or uncaring of the tension crackling between us. "Breaking ground?" I echoed, disbelief warring with outrage. "On my land? You have no right to be here, let alone to survey anything. I haven't signed a single paper, and there's no court order that allows you to step foot on this property. You are trespassing." The older man's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something ugly passing through them. "We prefer to avoid unnecessary complications, Ms. Miller. Our research indicates that your family's claim, while historically interesting, is tenuous. We've acquired the adjacent parcels, and this farm sits directly in the path of our expansion. We'd rather do this amicably." "Tenuous?" I spat, a laugh bubbling up, sharp and humorless. "My family's claim is 7 generations deep, sealed by deeds and sweat, not some corporate decree." "Amicably? You call sending lawyers, then surveyors onto my land without permission amicable?" The younger man stepped closer, his voice dropping, laced with a barely concealed threat. "Look, old woman, we're not playing games. This project is happening. Either you cooperate and we make this process less painful for everyone, or we will pursue every legal avenue available to us. We're prepared to take this all the way." His arrogance was a bitter taste in my mouth, a stark revelation of their true colors. This wasn't about negotiation. It was about intimidation, a calculated assault on my resolve and my home. The amicable tone from their letters had evaporated, replaced by blatant aggression. "Old woman?" I retorted, my voice rising, vibrating with righteous anger. "My name is Sarah, and this farm is my life. You think you can intimidate me with your suits and your fancy equipment? You think a few threats will make me abandon everything my ancestors built? You're gravely mistaken. You want to take this all the way? Good. Because I've got a century of history on my side and a resolve you clearly underestimate. Get your equipment off my property. Now." The morning light, usually a gentle balm, felt like an interrogation lamp that day. I woke to the low thrum of heavy machinery, a sound alien and monstrous against the familiar chirping of crickets. My heart slammed against my ribs, a desperate drumbeat of dread. Peeking through the kitchen window, coffee forgotten, I saw them. Orange flags, an invasion of plastic brightly proclaiming new, unwelcome boundaries, dotted the field where my grandfather had once taught me to plant corn. A large excavating machine, its yellow arm like a predatory claw, sat poised near the ancient oak, a sentinel of my family's history. "What in God's name are they doing?" I whispered, the words catching in my throat, tasting like ash. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone, dialing Sarah, the young, idealistic lawyer who had taken my case pro bono. The line crackled, her voice tired. "I'm sorry. I'm heading there now." They filed an immediate injunction for pre-construction access, citing some obscure zoning ordinance. It's a land grab, pure and simple, trying to establish a physical presence. I raced outside, the dew-kissed grass cool beneath my bare feet. A man in a high-vis vest was shouting directions to another, marking something near the old well. "Hey!" I bellowed, my voice surprisingly strong despite the quake in my knees. "Get off my land! You have no right to be here!" The man turned, his face impassive, almost bored. "Morning, ma'am. We're just performing a routine soil sample, permitted by the court." "Permitted? I haven't been notified of any such permit." My voice was shaking now, but my resolve hardened. This wasn't just paper anymore. It was dirt under my fingernails, earth under my feet. "This is private property. You are trespassing." He simply smirked, a patronizing lift of his lips. "You might want to check with your lawyer, ma'am. The order was signed late last night. We're just following instructions." The air grew thick with tension, smelling of diesel and freshly disturbed earth. My eyes burned, but no tears would fall. I pulled out my phone, recording them, shouting their actions, naming them as trespassers, even as they continued their work, ignoring me with practiced indifference. The police arrived shortly after, called by me, but their presence offered no comfort. "Ma'am," the officer explained, his tone weary, "this looks like a civil matter. They claim to have court orders for access. We can't intervene in a land dispute, not unless there's a clear breach of peace." "A clear breach of peace? They are destroying my farm," I cried, gesturing wildly at the orange flags, the looming machine. The officer shifted uncomfortably. "We understand your distress, but our hands are tied. You need to take this up with the courts." Their words felt like a betrayal, leaving me utterly exposed, a lone figure against an army of corporate indifference. Every drone of the excavator, every metallic clink, felt like a hammer blow directly to my soul. This wasn't about legal technicalities for them anymore. It was about breaking me, about forcing me off the land that coursed through my veins like blood. The air in the courtroom was thick, not just with the scent of old wood and tension, but with the palpable weight of generations. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a drumbeat echoing the countless footsteps that had walked my land before me. Mr. Davies, their slick lawyer, stood before me, his questions sharp, designed to chip away at my resolve, to make my truth seem like mere folklore. "Ms. Hayes," he began, his voice a polished drone, "you claim this land has been in your family for generations. Can you present a definitive document from, say, the early 1800s to unequivocally prove this?" I looked at him, then at the judge, then at the few friendly faces scattered in the gallery. A tremor ran through me, not of fear, but of profound, righteous anger. "Mr. Davies," I stated, my voice surprisingly steady, "the land doesn't just hold papers, it holds stories. It holds the sweat of my great-great-grandmother, who cleared the brush with her own hands. It holds the laughter of my grandfather, teaching me to fish in the creek that still runs through it." He scoffed, a subtle, dismissive sound. "Emotional appeals are not evidence, Ms. Hayes. The law requires tangible proof." "Proof?" I echoed, my voice gaining strength, resonating with conviction. "Proof is in the soil. It's in the way my hands know every furrow, every stone. It's in the legacy of survival, of building something from nothing. My family didn't just own this land, Mr. Davies. We became it. The title isn't just a document. It's etched into our very bones, passed down through stories whispered by the wind in the old oak trees, by the taste of the peaches my grandmother planted. I leaned forward slightly, my gaze unyielding. You want a piece of paper from the 1800s? My paper is the living history of this farm, recorded not by some clerk, but by the very lifeblood of my family. And your current deed, Ms. Hayes, is in your name. We dispute the validity of its original transfer, citing irregularities and a clear intent for modern development, he pressed, circling like a shark. The city needs this land for progress, for jobs, for housing. Your sentimentality is holding back the future. My eyes flashed with an ancient fire. Progress? For whom? For developers who see only dollar signs where I see generations of dreams? My family's progress was building a life here, sustaining ourselves, contributing to this community. You call my connection sentimentality, but it's the very foundation of who I am. This isn't just real estate, Judge. This is my history. This is my soul. The words hung in the air, heavy with undeniable truth. I felt a tear prick the corner of my eye, but I refused to let it fall. This was not a moment for weakness, but for unwavering strength. They want to erase us, Judge. They want to erase everything we ever were, everything we ever built. The peace that settled over the farm after the verdict was a profound revelation, not just an absence of noise, but a living, breathing entity. Each morning I walked the dew-kissed fields, the cool earth yielding beneath my worn boots, a deep gratitude seeping into my bones. The air, crisp with autumn's promise, carried the clean scent of dry leaves and distant wood smoke, a balm to a soul long besieged. The hum of fear, the constant threat of eviction, had vanished, leaving behind a tranquil vastness that mirrored the endless sky above. This wasn't merely a break from conflict, it was the very essence of home reclaimed. Old Mr. Henderson visited a few days later, his briskness softened by quiet contentment. We sat on the porch swing, few words needed. It settles, doesn't it? He murmured, his gaze sweeping over the cornfields, like the dust after a hard wind. You fought for more than papers, Sarah. You fought for the very soul of this place for generations past and those yet to come. His voice, often sharp, now held a gentle reverence. I looked at the ancient oak by the barn, its branches reaching like gnarled fingers. It's in the quiet now, I replied, my voice a whisper. In the way the light touches the old wood, in the rustle of the leaves. That's where the truth of this farm truly lives. As twilight painted the sky in soft lavenders and deep indigos, Mr. Henderson prepared to leave. He paused at the porch steps. Take your time now, Sarah, he advised, his voice a gentle echo in the vast stillness. Let the land heal, and let yourself heal with it. This isn't just a victory, it's a new beginning, rooted deeper than ever. His car pulled away, taillights shrinking into pinpricks of red on the winding road, until they vanished. I stood watching until only the vast, star-pricked canvas remained, the quiet hum of the farm settling around me like a comforting shroud. The fight was over, but the story of this land, my family's story, would ripple on, a timeless whisper carried by the wind. The dust finally settled, not just in the courthouse, but across these fields I call home. A quiet hum replaced the frantic whispers of worry, a silent symphony of relief washing over the very soil, seeping into the old barnwood and the roots of the ancient oaks. Each morning now, the sunrise feels softer, less burdened by the weight of a looming fight. I walk the perimeter, my boots kicking up the same earth my great-grandparents trod, and there's a lightness in my step I haven't known in months, years even. The air carries the scent of damp soil and blooming clover, a fragrance of peace I once feared would be ripped away. My gaze drifts across the familiar contours of the farm. The pond shimmers, undisturbed, reflecting the vast blue sky. No more strangers with measuring tapes, no more ominous legal documents slid under the door. The only sounds are the rustle of leaves, the distant caw of a crow, and the steady thrum of my own heartbeat, now in sync with the land's rhythm once more. There's a profound silence that speaks louder than any triumphant shout, a deep, resonant calm that settles into my bones. It's the kind of quiet that lets you hear the wisdom of generations whispering from the very air around you, a silent affirmation that this struggle, this fight, was worth every ounce of my being. I remember my grandfather's hands, calloused and strong, teaching me how to mend a fence, how to coax life from the reluctant earth. His words, often simple, always profound, echo in my mind. "This land isn't just dirt, child," he'd say, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "It's memory, it's future." That striking image of his weathered hands, clutching a handful of fertile soil, grounds me now more than ever. It was never just about a piece of paper. It was about the stories etched into every furrow, the sweat and tears that nourished these crops, the laughter that filled these rooms. The legal battle itself, once a monstrous shadow, has begun to fade, receding into the background like a bad dream. The lawyers, the courtrooms, the cold, harsh light of official scrutiny, they seem distant, almost unreal now, replaced by the tangible warmth of sunlight on my face and the solidity of earth beneath my feet. Their presence, those who sought to take what was mine, has dissolved like mist in the morning sun, leaving no trace but the strengthening resolve within me. I am no longer just defending, I am thriving. This farm, this victory, is not merely mine. It belongs to all those who came before me, whose spirit I felt guiding me through the darkest hours. It belongs to the future generations who will, I pray, walk these same fields, breathing this same air. What I've learned is that home isn't just a place on a map, it's an unbreakable bond, a sacred trust passed down through blood and effort. It is the unwavering truth of who you are, rooted deeply in the earth, impervious to the greedy hands that seek to uproot it. And as the sun dips below the western ridge, painting the sky in hues only the old ones could truly name, I feel their whispers on the wind, a timeless echo in the heart of this land, binding me to forever.